Hi guys. Welcome to my channel. In this video, I will summarize to you chapter 1 of The Price of Tomorrow, How the Economy Works Part 1. If you're interested to know the content, you need to keep on watching. In 2008 housing crisis, many experts expected the housing price to continue to rise until they were well past the housing bubble limit. The same thing will happen today. The continuing rise of debt that cannot be paid back was the heart of the housing crises and will be at the heart of the next crisis. A bubble pops when people wake up and realize that the debt can never be paid off. At that point, credit is removed and assets will collapse. It is what led to the bubble in technology stocks in the early 2000s. It is what led to the crisis in Greece and to the crisis in Venezuela today. With credit continuing to advance globally, it is only a shell game as to where the next crisis originates. In fact, the shell game is now moving to currencies themselves in the entire economic system that is built on top of them. World economies could be viewed as one large economy, driven by trust, interconnection, movement of money and debt. That means that no single country's gross domestic product, GDP, can be considered in isolation. The four components that make up GDP. First, consumer spending or personal consumption. Second, investment. Third, net exports. Finally, government spending. GDP tells you how each country is managing the four components together. As a byproduct of that, it also tells you what a government values more to drive their economy and jobs. Each country is maintaining policies that incentivize its side of the equation with government help. If any of those variables changes too quickly in either economy, chaos ensues as the major part of their respective economies collapses. Understanding this balance and making informed decisions is important because we all live in the same world. Each side of a relationship affects the other. A growing consumer class in China could very well help lift world economies, but for that to happen, Chinese workers will need to be paid more. And if American workers want to sell to China, they will have to earn less. When debt is growing much faster than a country's economy, at what point does the music stop? It is often difficult to see because asset price inflation can make individuals, companies, and even countries feel much better off than they are. We fool ourselves into believing that assets, such as stocks or housing, always go up over the long term because they always have. We should ask whether those same assets would have gone up over the last 20 years if there hadn't been $185 trillion of new capital injected into economies over that time. To keep the system running, monetary policy all around the world has target inflation rates. From a debt perspective, this makes sense because inflation makes debt easier to pay back. For those unable to access debt and put it into assets that rose in value, the inflation has been punishing them because the currency is worth less and their labor is worth less. Quantitative easing refers to the act of injecting liquidity into an economy by a central bank. In order to inject liquidity, new dollars need to be created and they need to be delivered into the economy. Many people refer to the first part as printing new money. The second part, delivering the newly created money into the economy, is done in a variety of ways, such as large-scale asset purchases from public and private sectors, where the government buys toxic or underperforming assets. Quantitative easing causes currency devaluation, even if that's not what it specifically intended to do. The government doesn't actually have more assets, it's just representing its assets with more units of currency, which means each unit of currency is worth less. There is a close connection between currency value and labor rate. A country devaluing its currency also indirectly lowers its labor rate against global competitors, which can help job growth in the short term. Other countries trying to compete for the same scarce jobs devalue their currencies to keep their economies from collapsing. This race to the bottom on currencies only serves to further push up global asset prices. When governments are unable to substantively change the rules of the game or gain leverage because other countries are forced to devalue in response to keep their jobs, the next step is tariffs and trade wars. That act raised tariffs to project jobs, but dramatically underestimated the reaction from other countries in doing so. They were foolish to believe that they could keep their existing exports while protecting their own economy from imports. Other solutions? Let's imagine for a moment a world where the central bankers decided to let the banks fail. No quantitative easing. No bailouts. Asset prices collapse. Loans on those assets become non-performing. Most of the banking system collapses. real estate would not be priced anywhere near where it is today. Stock would likely still be near historic lows. Monetary easing and artificially low interest rates have been wonderful for the wealthy and those with assets. Meanwhile, those without assets find themselves on a treadmill that is moving ever faster and unable to keep up. A market where the government reaches in to decide who wins or loses is nothing more than crony capitalism, where wealth is not created by the value you create and the risks you take to get there, but by a political system that rewards its insiders. Chapter 2 will be summarized in the next video. If you like to get a copy of this book, click on the link in the description below.